Welcome back to this final session of this corporate governance conference. It's been a long day, but I think we're here facing a fantastic panel of speakers who have many years of experience in the business world, in boards of directors, and I'm sure that they will shed, I would say, very interesting and insightful light on the issues that we have been discussing today. And I think that part of the goals of this conference is to bring the experience of corporate governance in practice also to the world of academia. So we're looking forward to a fantastic panel. We understand that corporate culture, also corporate culture from a governance perspective, has many different dimensions that we have been touching upon and exploring in some depth during the day. And now it's a time for very experienced CEOs and board members to help us think more about the corporate culture and its role in corporate governance. So we have Helena Herrero. Helena is the president of HP for Southern Europe. She has many years of experience in very senior executive positions at HP. She's been working on many changes in the company worldwide and also at the European level. And she's also a board member of different, both for-profit and non-for-profit companies. So, Helena, thank you very much for being with us today.
A pleasure.
And we have Gildo. Gildo is the chairman and CEO of Zegna, the Italian fashion firm known worldwide. And he comes from a family that has been in business for 110 years.
12.
And 12 years, sorry, I'm very sorry, 112 years. That's a very important detail, 112 years. So it's a family business. And we'll ask Gildo about what happens with a family business with very deep values and very strong culture when this firm goes public, which is the case of Zegna back in December 2021. So thank you, Gildo, for being with us today. I want to say hello and give a warm welcome to Juan Pujadas. Juan is online, based out of New York. Juan, thank you very much for being with us. Juan is...
My pleasure.
Very good, Juan. Great to see you and great to be able to listen to you. Juan has had a very long and distinguished career at PwC. He became the global CEO for the consulting business of PwC. And about 4 years ago, he was asked, and perhaps he can give you some additional details, to become a board member of Wells Fargo, the US retail bank that had a huge corporate crisis. And Juan had already many years of experience in working with boards of directors, being at the board of PwC, and would love to hear his experience on how culture, gets ingrained in a company and how you can change and improve the quality and the depth of your culture. Thank you very much, Juan. Juan is also a board member of other companies, UST Global and other companies, also a number of non-for-profits. So he will help us a lot think about these dimensions. Finally, we have Juvencio Maeztu here. Juvencio is the deputy CEO of Ingka, Ikea. Ingka, as you know, is the retail company of Ikea. Ikea is a large, very important group, but the company that actually does business and deals with customers is the company that Juven leads. Juven is also a member of the supervisory board of the company. He can tell us also, if he wants to, the special board structure. Okay, so it's not a board structure that fits well with somehow definitions and models of corporate governance, but one that has been very, very effective. And as you know, Ikea is a company known worldwide, not just for its products, its huge retail presence, but also the deep culture that has been somehow permeating the company and its employees for decades. So we are here with a fantastic panel, and I would like to start asking Helena Helena, I have heard you many times explain the culture, the HP way, the HP culture. Tell us why this culture is special and in which ways it makes the company move forward.
Well, good afternoon, and thanks, Jordi, for inviting me to be here. And honestly, what a panel! I mean, I'm sharing with. I would say, I mean, I've heard today just before presentation. I mean, defining a culture is something very difficult because it's like in a personal, you know, it's the personality. I always say culture is values in action. It's what really, and you know, belonging to an HP company, we say it's in the DNA. It's in the DNA of the company. It's how people, officially, non-officially, it's how decisions are taken. It's how we do things. And that is fundamental. We always say that when people come into HP, you know, it's not so easy at the beginning, because a lot is done. It's a culture very much centered in people, in trust and respect, in integrity, in understanding the power that a person has, giving them empowerment, development, flexibility, agility. Think that we do things and we grow together. We think that we can bring a contribution. We know that we sell technology to people, but it's important what the human being, what the person brings in. When I say this, could look very obvious, but honestly, this is what really holds the company, binds the company. In 1939, when the founders, Bill and Hewlett, we were, I remember I used to have a book that was called The HP Way. The managing by objectives. Today, everybody calls managing by objectives, that managing by walking around. I mean, in the hybrid world of today, this becomes fundamental. So the essence is a culture that adapts, that understands, and that fosters that people can bring the utmost. We say it's the HP family, and it's true that it's inside the employees, but we also, it's the whole ecosystem. It's our partners, our customers. That is what it holds for it. I think the innovation, and we have the best example here in Barcelona with probably the largest center around the world outside of the US in what is innovation. When you feel that you have a contribution and people feel that their contribution, that is important. It's a culture that is evolving. Now, everybody talks now about the ESG, and I've been listening about it. And for me, I've been 40 years in this company. So I think I understand the culture. We've always thought about social responsibility, about the impact companies have in the world and society around, about the evolution that in very difficult moments like COVID or like different crises that we've gone, how can we help there? So I think it's something that is a competitive advantage. It's fundamental for attracting and retaining talent. It's fundamental for human capital, which honestly, as Peter Drucker used to say, culture eats strategy at breakfast. It's true. It's true. You can access capital, you can copy or replicate a strategy. It's very difficult to really copy a culture there. It can be an asset, it can be a risk. I have the fortune to belong to a company that has a very, very strong culture. And I see it with passion because I think that's the main reason I've been 40 years here. It's culture.
Thank you, Helena. Gildo, I would like to help us reflect a little bit on the role of cultures. You feel it at Zegna, and you've been working with Zegna for many years now. And a number of values that have remained the same, a way of doing things at Zegna, of innovating, of creating new products, etc. And how the fact that you have become a public company this has been somehow changed a little bit or reinforced or managed with different mechanisms. Can you share with us some of your reflections on this?
No, thank you. Thank you first to invite me to this interesting session that is becoming key since we are a public company and we are still rather fresh in New York. You know, we ran the IPO in December of last year, and so we are learning. So we are, I think that this subject is quite interesting. It's very easy. We remain very much related to the family unity and to the value of the founder. And I think that this is key, not only for future generation, but to the way we run the business and to the way you know, we keep the management together. And I think that this theme, together with a big respect for environment, which the founder created in the 30s. He was a philanthropist, Ermenegildo Zegna, my grandfather. He was a man that gave back in the 30s and the 50s, who started to plant reforestation project in the mountain of more than 500,000 trees. He created a village. So I think this art of giving back is very important and part of the value. So I would say united family, mix of shared value, good governance. I think this is something that I always believed in. You remember, I've been serving with you 15 years, and I think that the role of the independent, the role of committees are very important. However, in running a study, an analysis with McKinsey recently, we decided to go for a study in diversity, equality, and inclusion. And we had 5,000 responses. And I wanted a factory worker as to, with the sales associate in the store, be part of that. And I think it's a very interesting study. And they showed me a slide of longevity. And they mapped what longevity means. And we are pretty longevity company, more than one century old. And I think that they came up with 4 characteristics, exactly, which they mapped here, and which I couldn't agree more. One is ambition, and I think that the important is not to lose the ambitious ethos of the founder. So I think that this, the entrepreneurship, the giving back factor, the care of the environment, I think is very much part of the ethos. Clear purpose, I think that is means transcending the organization to be kept alive through decades, going beyond the mere shareholder value creation. And I think that ESG, I mean, has a lot to do with that. And I think that we are profound believer in the sustainability world. I think we are one of the few companies that is capable to trace the raw material. We have traceable wool, we have traceable cashmere. That means we know the name of the farmer that produces a particular raw material, and I think it's very important. The third factor for longevity, I think, reinvention and innovation. Don't stay still. So I think we have a word in Zegna, a motto more than a word, that each generation should build a floor of the house. And I'm the 3rd generation, and I think the 4th generation is now with me, and I think has been part in rebuilding the rebranding of Zegna, which coincidentally it happened in parallel with the IPO. I mean, we decided that, and I bring in the board judgment, because really we were supported by the board culture and also governance. We decided we had to change the perception of the brand from a tailoring brand to a luxury. And I think that meant a kind of a transformation of the culture of the company, literally from the store to the designer to the factories. And I think that this was a big transformation in which management worked with board and had to retransform. So this reinvention of innovation, I think that it's something that keeps alive. And the fourth point, probably the most important one, obsession for talents. I think there is no company and no future of the company without the belief in talent. And I think that it's our responsibility to nurture talent. And I must tell you, the IPO has made us more attractive. I think that the rebranding of Zegna has made us more attractive and has made us more diverse. I'm very proud to say that I'm hiring more women than men, finally. Not only in the store. It means that we're becoming kind of more feminine in a way, which is good. The lifestyle is becoming. And I think that this new look that we came out is very unigender. I mean, I can wear it, you can wear it, and I think that's what it is. So, true belief in the value of the founder, but with the modernization factor and with the right talent. I think these are the three ingredients of our corporate philosophy. Regardless of whether we are public or not, that's secondary. The fact that you are public, it adds even more responsibility and pressure, which we'll talk about later, pressure to management.
Gildo, we'll come back to this, Zegna going public, but I think your initial remarks, I think, are very clear and very, I think, insightful for understanding the role of corporate culture and values in this conference. So let me ask Juan. Juan, you have many years of experience in both working as a board director and advising boards of directors, and you've seen many transformation processes, and you've been helping recently Wells Fargo and many other companies from the inside. How do you act at the board level? How can you act at the board level so that somehow the expected culture that the board, shareholders may have around a company, how this vision or this perspective may trickle down the whole organization? What's your experience, and what can you share with us?
Your question is a very good one. I think it's been said by the other panelists, that getting it right is about having, a set of values, having a purpose, having, the cultural organization to line up behind that, and then being accountable, for when it works and when it doesn't work. The question is, how do you get that to an organization? In some cases, it's not hard. It's an organization of, a few people. In our case at Wells Fargo, it's 250,000 people. All of them, growing up in an organization where they said, run it like you own it, which didn't give you a lot of inspiration that there was a common thread, going throughout. So the first step was really understanding where you've gone astray. So you had a vision of how the organization was constructed and how it operated, but it's somehow not doing that or not operating that. And that's a very, very challenging, set of circumstances that you have to face up, right? Because you can think and talk about how it's working, but in reality, that's not how it's working. So that's very, very, very difficult work. And we spent a good period of time just trying to get an understanding of where things were not working the way we thought they should be working, with a lot of help. We had consultants, we had former employees, we had customers, we had regulators, we had feedback from the market, through the valuation of the company. The second thing is to then really line up a series of concrete steps, including the fact that you're going to have to change some of the talent in the organization, because the people that are there are no longer signed up for the program, or are no longer agreeing that the program is the one that's going to get you to deliver that corporate culture that's going to align behind those values and the purpose that the organization desires to have to get the return to not just the shareholders, but all the other stakeholders, the community, the regulators, the communities that we're in, and that's very important. And then you have to have the tenacity and the patience and the feedback and the accountability to be able to deliver that. And And that's a playbook, you know, Jordi, that we've used at PwC with a number of companies. So it wasn't really a surprise, you know, when I was asked to join the board of Wells Fargo, that this is the program that, you know, we would have to get behind. It's hard work. It takes time. And it's in everything that you do. It's in the controls, it's in the reporting, it's in the customer service, it's in the call centers, it's in the products, it's in the face of the company. You can't just paint advertising on top of it and declare victory. It has to be felt by every customer, every employee, every regulator in everything that we do with excellence and with accountability.
Thank you very much, Juan, for your remarks and observations. Ruben, I would like to ask you about what makes Ikea such a unique company for so many people. First of all, customers. It's one of the most impressive brands in the world. What does Ikea offer its employees that actually makes Ikea so attractive for so many young people, and how those values that actually shape the way, you know, Ikea works, how those values actually permeate your decision-making process at the board level and also the executive committee level?
Now I have 2 minutes to answer your question. I would summarize in 3 things. The first one is you mentioned, Guido, about the purpose. It's the power of the purpose. For IKEA founder in Barcamprat was to create a better life for the many people. And he created the company to serve the purpose. It's not the other way around. So for him, the company was a mean to such extent that when he was 50s, he donated the company to the foundation. So you have to be very brave to do that when you are 50s. And the basic point is the depth of the understanding of the vision. So for us, it's not something on the corridors to the staff canteen. It's actually pretty much deep. And we are the first generation who are leading the company without the founder. He passed away 4 years ago. And both Jesper and myself, which is a 2-people board of directors, then we have this extra responsibility. It's not only to do what is right, it's not only to do what you feel is right, it's also to honor the legacy of the founder. So we owe to him the future. The second thing is the interaction between culture and values and leadership. Because culture and value is pretty deep, but at the same time, it has to evolve. Because concept about equality or diversity and inclusion has a different meaning today than 30 years ago. Or the planet, we even updated. We have 8 corporate values. We didn't have one value called planet, and I care for planet, which was introduced recently. So our values are quite generic statements, but the depth has been evolving over time. And then to what extent leadership is actually the important thing, because it's leading by example, which makes a culture alive. You were referring to that, Helena. So it's this combination. So at the end of the day, the culture is in the hands of all the leaders to make it better. And the third one is pretty much connected with our organizational structure. But you could say our long-term view is extremely supported by our financial resilience. We are quite healthy balance sheet. You could say 85% of the 55 billion euros balance sheet is equity. So this allows us to actually turn long-term decisions. You could say that we are very conservative in the financial side and very aggressive in the opportunities. And we make the money before we spend. And at the end of the day, 29% goes back to society of taxes. And then out of the remaining net profit, the majority stays in the company and 15% goes to the foundation. So somehow we are one of the biggest NGO in the world because everything goes back to society. There is €0 that goes to the private pocket of any shareholder. That may be different and may be applicable to all the companies, but the essence is what is important for every company, how to build a financial resilience that allows you to take a long-term decision. Because this is to your question, this is when you are cementing the corporate, the culture, which is in every decision you make, it has to get you to the Ikea vision. So these three things are, in my opinion, shaping our culture.
Thank you very much, Juvencio. Very, very interesting reflections on the culture of Ikea. I will ask a couple of additional questions to the members of this panel, but if you want to start thinking about questions for them in a few minutes, we'll open up the debate to all of you. I would like to go back to you, Gildo, and ask you about how the culture of the company and the culture of the values has shaped the culture of the board of directors. Zegna, about 20 years ago, you decided together with the other shareholders to invite external board directors, independent board directors, and you started to make the board of directors, I would say, more professional in the sense of having independent directors. This is something that obviously now that you've gone public is even more stronger. How do you see the way, in your case, the Zegna family and the values of the Zegna family have influenced the board of directors and the culture of the board? This morning we had a very interesting paper by Paul Healy on the effectiveness of the board, and these informal factors seem to be very relevant. Can you share with us those dimensions?
But listen, I've always been attracted by management, American culture. So I try to run a private company, family business like a public company, always, since I've been appointed CEO. So it has been my doctrine. So independent, at least as many as family member, because I had the experience of the family of my mother that the business went sour because too many families stepped in. It was Fila, you know. Fila is now in the hand of Korean. And the business went broke because there were no rules, and you know, everybody was running because of the name was in the company, and there was no regulation. So I think just putting a regulation, who should do what, and based on meritocracy was very important, both in the family and in the board. And so I elected to have a very strong board member. I like to be challenged because I think the board has to challenge the CEO. And in those days, I used to be only CEO, not chairman, and the chairman, as you know, is another role. And I think I used the independent to become my advisor. And every Sunday I was paying a couple of calls just to, in order to listen to them, in order to seek advices to avoid making mistake. And so that helped when we held our 5 boards to go prepared, and I know whom I count on, and I think it was already majority. So I think that one time only they voted against me. I can't tell you for what, thank God. But otherwise, it was really a good things. The other positive things is that the independent have to have different roles. They can't be all luxury, all banking, or lawyers. And so I think that we selected a good representation in terms of diversity of not only of gender, of nationalities, of whatever, just by skills. So in particular, also in the old board, but in the new board, I think we have really, it's an incredible team of people that really can shape the future of Zegna, avoiding making mistakes. So the two things go together, but God bless the dependent in my case, and family members still there, but you know, if they are capable, based on true meritocracy. And also the fact that new members, the 4th generation, steps in, we have very clear rules and regulation on how they step in. You know, they have to be going through a process of you know what it is, to avoid making mistakes for the good of the company.
Very good, Gildo. Very good. Very good. Helena, if I may, I mean, you've had many years of experience with different types of boards. You have your own experience at HP, actually dealing with different types of boards in the recent history of HP. And I would like to ask you, how you think that somehow the culture and the dynamics, the internal dynamics of a board can actually have an impact on outcomes, on better decisions, and in general, how these dynamics that you've seen in so many boards can actually improve the quality of the culture of the company itself?
I think this is a fundamental question. I think when we talk about cultures and cultural impact, I mean, it starts by the board. Let me be very clear, because if we oversee and you know how the strategy, the operations, the management, the talent, but also, and I say this today, of the risks that we have, I mean, boards need to start to think about what does it mean, what are the main ones. So when I think about in the different boards, but also in the company where I belong to, is it's fundamental that what we say at HP, we walk the talk. You can't say that we have an open and trust and respect and open door culture, and there is no collaboration, no spirit. The board is not diverse. Diverse not only in gender that I was listening before, but it's in the different experience, in the different nationalities. If you want to be a global company, if you want to understand different generations in consumers, you need to have different type of ages. And I think, I mean, it starts there. And it starts also understanding and listening. And something that always worries is, what's the culture you have or you really is going in the company, and the culture that is desired. One thing that sometimes I find is a lot of people say they would like, and they talk about the culture, it exists, but the reality is not there. Why? There are a lot of reasons, and we can talk about it. It's how you operationalize in the senior management. So for me, boards need, and I say boards and chairman, starting there, but it goes into what you operationalize day to day. It's in the senior management, it's in the CEO, and it's an open dialogue. It's two ways. It's listening, it's asking the right questions, it's giving advice, not doing because culture is not tactical, it's strategic. And this is what some people do not understand. You don't change your culture in one day. Now, when you really change and it's not an asset, it becomes a risk. It takes time. And when boards are non-functional, they are non-functionally, there is no trust within the members, that at the end, you're not making the right decisions. You're not making the right questions. So for me, I mean, and I've seen it, for example, in HP, we've seen a lot of evolutions, mergers, acquisitions. I remember Compaq, I remember EDS, split, spin-offs. You know, in 2015, we split the company in two. I remember the creation of that board was very much well defined in what was diversity and inclusion, what you were saying about not only gender, it was absolutely understanding that fosters innovation, that really responds to the reality of today. So for me, that is fundamental. I mean, it can't be. It's a road, it's a motorway of two ways, and it's with the leadership, it's with all employees, because culture is something that it's not only top down. I think it's both ways. And if you don't listen what is happening, I mean, the best example is nowadays, the hybrid world. I mean, we need to understand if the culture is affecting or not affected by this. This is something that boards think about it. If the new generations are thinking in the same way we were all thinking, how you manage that are the type of questions boards need to take, because this is thinking about long-term sustainable growth, sustainable value. If they don't make that questions, the thing doesn't work. Just doing it.
Thank you, Helena. Very, very insightful reflections on how boards actually work on culture and how they influence the culture of the organization. Juvencio, let me ask you about how you and the executive committee and the board actually take into account the values related with your employees. Okay, and you have a fantastic HR policy and have a very high retention rate, and also the values related with customers. How those set of values, how do you play with them at the executive committee level and also at the board level, and how important they are when you make decisions, strategic decisions, you know, to buy another company, to integrate another company, to integrate vertically even deeper, because you are very, very vertically integrated. How do those values actually affect those decisions?
Two things. One is how do we integrate, and then how we take decision. The first answer is, what is the purpose of the purpose? Why do we want to have a culture in the company? And we clarify internally 3-4 years ago, what does good performance look like? Why do we have a culture? Why do we have how do we integrate that? And we came with the 4 dimensions of the way we call value creation goals that I will mention, and that connected quite quickly to the entire organization. It has been one of the easiest, if not the easiest change we have done. We are 170,000 people, and it went quite quickly because we clarified that it's about creating value for customers. We said better homes for customers. Then it's about better life for people, and people is employees, is value chain, and also is communities that we touch. And then we said better planet for all. And also we said better company for the long chain that can create value. And when we have clarified that this is the way we want to evaluate your performance, then this has taken off in the company. I was last week in Berlin, meeting a group of young potentials, 100 people that we want to fast track. They are 22, and in 3 years we want them to be director of store management, which is the backbone of our business. And then one guy said to me, he's 22, he said, the day I cannot stand behind the product we sell, I will quit. It was quite powerful statement. And that's why we have clarified the 4 dimensions. And then by doing that, the next step is how do you integrate? How do you avoid dilemmas? Because I don't know, for example, in the climate part, I don't know anyone who wants to destroy the planet, but I know many people who are lost. If this is good for the planet or the wallet. And then you find a lot of dilemmas in the decision making. How can you integrate that? And that's why we have worked massively in having the right standards, the right policies, the right rules, the right way to evaluate decisions, and more importantly, which is extremely needed in the future, how can support our leaders with a moral compass to take decisions? Because society is getting very polarized, and it's a roller coaster of geopolitics, inflation, supply chain, moral dilemmas. So how can you equip your leaders to deal with these dilemmas, and what is the moral compass to guide on this decision? Because these decisions are making the culture a living reality or not.
Thank you, Juvencio. I would like to ask Juan, in your experience in different boards, some of them family businesses, family-owned businesses, some of them public companies with a diversity of investors, shareholders, many institutional investors. How sitting in any of those boards, and when you have to deal with those investors, those shareholders, being family businesses, family offices, or being institutional shareholders or other asset managers, how do you discuss those dimensions of culture? And do you see any difference between, let's say, family businesses and public companies in this respect?
The short answer is yes. We talked about a purpose and values. That doesn't mean that every company has to have the same purpose and the same values. Different companies, have different stakeholders, and therefore, they're built for a different purpose or they have different values. But I think one rule applies to all of them, Jordi, and that is in the best examples that I have seen, every major decision, and I think Helena touched on this, the board is not there to run the company. The board is there to provide oversight, to ask the questions about whether the company is keeping, and consistently to its purpose, whether it's driving, in a way that is achieving the, implementing the values, whether it's, executing the strategy. But one thing that is very, very important is that you constantly come back and that you ask the question, if we are going to do A, how does that relate to the values and to the purpose that we have as a company? Because at the end of the day, the board is the custodian. It's what holds that, with integrity. And so I found very, very, very good that companies ask those questions, and that guides then whether or not an acquisition is made, or whether a change in compensation is made, or whether exiting a market, exiting a country, exiting a product line. So something that's really strategic. How does it relate to the purpose of the company and the values, in how we do things, what we do and how we do those things. So.
Thank you very much, Juan. So it's time to open up the debate to the participants of the conference. So feel free to. So here, Paul.
So I have a question for Mr. Zegna. Your company, you've just decided to be a public company, and that would seem like a decision that imposes additional constraints on the board and on the company. You're now reporting to investors and to institutional investors more, or to analysts, activists potentially can have an interest in the stock, which might take you away from the longer term vision that you've got for the company. I'm just curious whether you discussed that when you thought about going public, and whether, with the benefit of hindsight, whether you've experienced or seen any evidence of pressures as a public company that differ from when you were not a public company.
I'm answering you with a smile, not yet.
Yes, you are. Yes. I'm not sure what that means, but I'm sure I'm about to find out.
I don't know, it's every day is different when you're a public company, in particular in Wall Street. But listen, I try to be very transparent. I'm a very direct person. When there is an issue, I'd rather say it. But I used to do it in the family, I used to do it in the board, and I do it with investors and with analysts. So, if I'm not the strongest in digital, okay? And so I say, guys, okay, I'm not the strongest, but work in progress. And this is the steps I'm doing in order to get there. I'm not the strong in licensing, but Zegna is not a licensing brand, so what do you want? But I'm strong in the supply chain. I'm strong in creating excellent product. I'm strong in the service. I'm strong in the maintenance. I try to focus on the pluses, but also making sure that they know that there is work in progress in the minuses. So this is the approach. And I think it works. And I think that the investor and the analysts are there to be listened. I appreciate what they tell me, because the benchmark is very important. You compare, I'm in the luxury field, and our benchmark are the French, unfortunately, more than the Italians. Mm-hmm. And they are extremely good in engineering luxury, and in Italian are the best in product. As a matter of fact, the French produce 2/3 of their apparel, luxury apparel, is produced in Italy, believe it or not. However, they're very strong in marketing. Mm-hmm. Look at wines. I think that Italian wines are better than French, but they do a much better job in marketing. And maybe it's Spanish. You have fantastic wine. So I think we have to understand, how to improve in the direction. And I think this is what investors want. Transparency and clarity. That's what they want. And they want to have your vision and how you proceed step by step. And I think every quarter is a step. And I think the board should be there to help me in doing the job. And I think the board should listen to management. I served 5 years in FCA that's where I learned my American way preparing for an IPO with Sergio Marchionne, which has been a fantastic master of the universe. And the challenge was, keep raising the bar and keeping doing things to the maximum and being disciplined. And I think that these are some of the things that I'm challenged to do, but so far so good. I would say that, has my life changed? Yes, more pressure, but the advantage is that I'm not the one putting pressure. The market is putting pressure on management. So that makes my life easier. How many times I used this, to question them and to say, let's go. And it was going one way and coming the other way around. Now you say, listen, this is what the market wants, period. You're part of the mission, you're part of the stock of this company. Just let's do it. And if they don't do it, out. It's as easy as that. And you have to be very, 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 how can I say, fair on what the market wants. So I would say more discipline and quicker execution. I think speed, clarity is very, very important when you're a public company. So I think my responsibility is not only to the Zegna family, which holds the majority, we still have 65%, but to a more variety of a shareholder. And I feel more responsible, but I think that I apply practically the same rules I used before. That's why I feel very, not comfortable, but sereno. How can I say?
Sereno, sí.
Sereno. Lo digo en español, que
Sí, sí.
sale mejor.
Very good. Rodolphe?
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, it's actually two questions in one, if I may. So I would like just to understand a little bit better a couple of things. So I teach a course which is called Values-Based Strategy, and we use Wells Fargo as the wrong example about what they did in the past and how they created these false accounts, and this was pervading the entire company. And so actually we stop at the level of how these things happen in the company because of the governance, because of the incentives at the different levels of the company. And so my first question would be to Juan. Could you help me teach my students about how actually this governance that was in place has been changed in order just to implement a new culture that actually fought back against what happened in the past? So this is the first question. And the second question is for you. You said that you were helping your decision makers, providing them a compass, a moral compass, and it's a clarification question. How do you do that? I mean, what is it that you give them? Is it kind of a book of questions? Is it a method? Is it so? I mean, I was super interested in knowing this. Thank you.
Juan, yes, sir.
So, very, very good questions. I was not part of the board historically, so I can't speak for what's been very well documented, and I'm going to leave it at that. But I will tell you that if you're going to change something, you have to affect change. You can't just simply talk about it. And so what has changed at Wells Fargo, in the 5 years or so that I've been on the board, and I said these things take time. They don't just simply happen overnight. As much as you want to move very quickly, but we have a complete change of the operating committee, which is the top level governance structure of the company. So that's the C-suite, and direct reports. We have changed, I would say probably 85-90% of the board is different. If you then go levels -1, -2, -3, 75% of that has changed in the company and has been brought in with new, going on to your second question, new techniques in terms of how goals are set, how people are paid, how the products have been simplified, how the governance translates into the operating procedures of the company. So it's a very, very radical transformation of a company that's 150 years old. And so it's not like you just simply blew it up and started again. It's also a company that is a product of many, many mergers and combinations, in some cases affected, in some cases just put together and left to its own devices. So very, very, very hard work that has been taken, with leadership from the senior executives and the advice and the, concurrence of the board, but in a very deliberate way through all the levels of the organization. And as I mentioned earlier, with 250,000 plus employees, this is a company that has the most, retail customers in banking in the United States. Banks, a significant number of the population. So it's not a small change that you're affecting, but it's been done by big transformation with a very clear sight of where we wanted to get to in terms of those values and our purpose in making, life better financially for our customers.
Thank you, Juan.
Yeah, to answer your question, I think it's action speaks louder than words. And then I will mention examples. Do I try to say that we are perfect? No. But the important thing is that you apply not only common sense, but deep values when you are facing decisions. If I take several examples, for example, 22 years ago, at sub-supplier level 3, there was a case of child labor in India. And then the easy decision at that time was to quit, to terminate the decision with the relation with the supplier. You protect yourself, you terminate, and you apply your code of conduct, and that's it. But 1,200 families would lose a job. So what we did was to partner with UNICEF, and at that time, and then we developed the most rigid and high-level standard for child protection in our entire supply chain. Another example that we have is more recently Russia. Russia has been very important for us, and you could say, and we had big presence in all the businesses we have. And then you have to take a decision. Do you exit or not? And then we went through the entire process, and then we said, okay, we can operate. It's not right what is happening. At the same time, we have thousands of families that depend on us. What do we do here? Finally, we took a decision to stop our operation, but what we did in such a way that we protected for more than 3 years the employees that we had to say goodbye. That came with a massive cost, but we were happy to do that. Or when the refugees of Ukraine were coming to the eastern part of Europe, then we did spend more than 45 million euros in furnishing homes of the host of people who were having. And then it was a big pain in our P&L. We said it is right to do. Or when we take decision on climate, for example, we don't maximize financial dimension. When we take decision on climate, we optimize both financial and CO2 reduction or CO2 absorption. This is critical for the future. An institution like IESE, who has a very good tradition in ethics and values, can mean a lot for the future, because more and more the society will get polarized. Is China based Taiwan? Do we all quit China? If Saudi Arabia removes the driving license to women, do we quit Saudi Arabia? If the abortion or whatever it is gets implemented, what do we do here? And companies cannot be at the mercy of Twitter or Instagram. You need to find your own way, your own path, based on your values, regardless of people's opinion. So I think it's extremely relevant, this resilience for the future.
Thank you, Juvencio. More questions from the audience? No questions. I would like to ask, okay, please.
Hi, we were talking earlier about how culture is so important. And I currently work at Google. In the last 3 years, I've felt that the culture has really been impacted, not for a positive, but for a negative. And at the cost of growth, like what would your advice be if you were, you know, in someone's shoes to help improve the culture and yet not jeopardize growth? Sorry, that's
you want the questions for any of the members of the panel?
whoever is willing to.
What's the question? Sorry.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I didn't get the question.
I guess to summarize, what would your advice be to, if you've established a really good culture in your company, but you want to grow as well? You don't want to jeopardize the amazing culture you've created. So what would your advice be to keep that culture and also keep on growing?
I can start, and I mean, I would say that we say that culture is life. It's something that you need to evolve and you need to adapt. And specifically because you are bringing new talent and you want to attract new talent, especially youth, we need to understand what's the motivation of these people. So culture is not something that, yes, it's very strong in the DNA, in the values, but at the end, it's the way you live those values that is important. People need to be, I mean, today, for example, purpose is fundamental for all new generations. We've always said it's important, but now today it's important the impact that that company has. Work-life balance, it's important. Mental health, it's important. People need to start to talk about these type of stuff if we want to evolve. We always say that engaged employees, motivated employees are fundamental for results, not only for the purpose of the company and long sustainable growth, but also for the business results itself. So I always say loyal employees, passionate employees, loyal customers, passionate customers. And it's a circle, and that gives a footprint overall. So if you don't understand and you don't evolve the culture, it moves by itself. When we say strong culture, it means a life culture, a dynamic culture.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Helena, Juan, Gildo, and Juvencio for a fantastic panel on corporate culture and corporate governance. You have helped us untangle a little bit this very complex issue. Sometimes we are able to identify when a company has a very good culture, but it's difficult to know how to create one, and more important, how to protect one, okay, from actually declining or becoming obsolete or having eventually a corroding culture. So thank you very much for being with us here in this conference, and we look forward to continue exploring with you all, again, many of these dimensions of culture. So please join me thanking all of them for a fantastic panel.